She Quest Podcast is the home of heart-opening dialogues, stories, and experiences for self-identified women on a She Quest. Season 5 is now bilingual as I welcome co-host Nadia Bonenfant. Hey Nadia!
Hey Estelle, delighted to be part of She Quest Podcast. Forward movement to live aware, bold, and whole. Let's do this.
Woohoo! Hi, She Quest. Estelle here. For one of our last episode of the season, I wanted to introduce Connie McInnis to the show, and I thought she's the perfect transition guest into the fall season, full of guts, drive, and passion, individual freedom. And Connie chats with us about her path into owning. Well, when we had the conversation, she was owning 4 studios and now she owns 5. So just to tell you how much of a fire she has. So here in the Halifax community, and I cannot wait for you to meet this fiery individual. But full disclosure here, this episode was recorded back in June and my voice track got lost. This is like the first time this ever happened. So instead of not sharing Connie with you at all, I've decided to just repiece the episode together to offer you a different, but I think really fun experience of listening to She Quest podcast. And I also thought it was just a perfect chance to just check in with you, my community. So I don't know about you, but it's been quite the summer here in Cow Bay in my art and yoga studio. And whilst I haven't been actively teaching yoga, I've been concocting quite the magic. First, I've been writing and creating a university course on this necessity of self-expression, but it's titled Methods in Breath, Movement, and Creativity, which will be out for the Quantum University Wellness Congress in October. So stay tuned for that. I've also been painting quite a bit. All my new calendars for 2022. I can't believe I'm saying that. But the Magic Garden calendar, I've been working on the planner. I've been working on a really special project I can't just quite yet say. So I've been working on all the illustrations. So you have to understand, like, I can't just do the illustration in like November when they come out. They need to be constructed way before, so we have time to put them together. Now, on top of that, I've been putting together the entire programming for the Art and Yoga Studio for fall in September. It's going to be so much fun. I think it's my best programming yet. In September, we'll be diving into underwater magic. In October, it's my Goddess Within program. In November, I've finally heard you. We will be doing some oracle making. So I cannot wait to see you at the online art and yoga studio, which is really the home of my Yours in Magic Women's Circle that is in this last 4 months. So I've decided to do one more round of Women's Circle. Some of these women, I mean, you're watching this show. It's been such an incredible quest with you. Some of you have been with me since like the very beginning, OG of She Quest. I feel so embedded with you. You've inspired me so much. And they're just new things. And I also think it's kind of just natural that to find other teachers, mentors, facilitators, and to just experience other connections in that field. So I'm excited for the last 4 months of the year. The other thing I've been doing lots of commission. One of them you can go check out on my Instagram. It was a huge 4 feet by 4 feet lupine painting, which was such the creative kind of epiphany for me. It really felt like an up leveling of my skills. And I was so, so glad I got it done and I got to share it with you all. One other thing I wanted to tell you, I started some sewing classes at the Patch Halifax. If you haven't checked out the Patch, this is not like sponsored or anything. Such a great little spot. And I did a pillow and I did one of those like canvas bags. And the last thing I did was a shirt. And so it's been really, really humbling. And I love, I love to stay humble on the pad and forever knowing that I am a student of life and there's so much to learn, so many mediums to try. So it's been really, really fun. So even though I haven't been actively teaching yoga, it's been really busy. And my husband finally, so my husband and my son, they've been begging me to go to New Brunswick, and I finally gave in, and we went to Sugarloaf. And that was really fun just to really be in the nature, be outside. And I just want to check in with you all too. Like, I want to know how you've been loving the new French episode. So this is the first season that Chic West was bilingual and that you got to know Nadia, and either through Instagram or our email at info@estellethompson.com. I'd love to know how you've been, loving the French episode. Like, we realize none of you listening are bilingual, but we've loved collaborating and joining our communities together, and we hope that we can make Chic West podcasts even better the next time around. So I have lots and lots more secrets and projects up my sleeve, but I'll have you read them first on my newsletter, and you can always sign up from my website, estellethompson.com, Thompson no P, and I'll see you there. But so without further ado, I'd love to introduce Connie. And Connie's passion and movement began really early, around age 2, and she was a competitive gymnast by the age of 5. And she's done so many fitness training. It's really, and you'll hear in the episode, she has such a deep passion for people, public relations, and the world of business in general. She is from Halifax originally, and she's a creator and founder of all the art studios of Halifax. So there's lots of them. I don't know if I'm gonna. So there's Rogue, there's the new Rinse now, Rebel, Rio, and I'm missing one, but there's 5 of them now. So they're all group fitness classes, ranging from Pilates, yoga to boxing to strength and now spin. And she's just a great entrepreneur, and she's won some award, RBC Women of Influence, as well as being recognized by TD for an international award campaign for efforts in business and community. So I'm so excited for you to meet Connie today. Thank you so much, dear listeners. I feel all of you listening, you're so loyal and you want a life that's unforgettable. And also, what this podcast has always really been about, which has been just to ask questions, to listen to stories, and to witness each other through that, I think is really, really special. And Nadia and I were talking the other day, and we were like, really, we're just sharing women's story, and there's some of them, like, they're simple, and then in that simplicity really lies the giant just magic of it. So thank you so much for being here. Your presence does not go unnoticed. So, the first question I asked Connie was the first question I always ask is what makes you feel alive? But more specifically, back in our conversation, we were I think we were just out of lockdown. So we're just kind of coming back to a bit more of a normalcy into the world. So we talked about kind of more specifically, what made you feel alive throughout the pandemic. So take a listen to this.
It's been such a different world over the last year that sometimes it's hard to find your shine and feel alive sometimes. But I mean, I think what I do and what I'm passionate about and the work that I do is totally and completely what makes me feel alive and what has kept me going. So we'll go with that.
And then I went on to ask what it is like to open an exercise studio during the pandemic.
We've been held back from our work in so many ways in the last year, but at the end of the day, it still had to be the focus of what keeps us alive and what keeps us moving because it's so important that we continue to show up in the role that we play, as leaders in our community or as a space that people rely on. Like we've got to be there at the end of the day to whatever capacity we can show up. So it has to be what keeps you alive. And if it's not what keeps you alive, you probably fell off a little bit this year and lost interest and and moved on and can't won't be able to return. So I think yeah, I think if anything, it's made me feel more alive and understanding the importance of what we do and kind of and more so the importance of my role in it all and leading a team of people and watching a lot of mental health pop up and yeah, just so many things. I mean, it's certainly what's kept me going, and it's made me feel probably more alive than ever and made me more motivated than ever to keep going.
Did Connie always want to be in a fitness industry? And I wanted to know what was her schooling and family background, and really, I mean, how she got where she is today.
So, no, I don't think I always wanted to open a fitness studio, but, obviously fitness has been a huge part of my life, deeper than that from probably the age of, I don't know, 7 or 8. I definitely had, started my little businesses, whether it was, selling painted rocks on the side of the road. I mean, we used to have a tree house, a few friends and I when we were little, and we would basically devote our entire summer for 10 years raising money for our tree house. And what you need money for a tree house, I have no idea. But for us, it was more about the journey. We didn't know what we were going to do with the money, but we had a president, we had a secretary, and we had a treasurer, and we were so passionate about it. And we would, go to our tennis lessons and come home and have a meeting and think about all the ways we were going to, build this brand, which was just our play treehouse. So it's innate for me for sure. It's I was a gymnast, and a huge part of that is the discipline and the goal setting that comes along with it. So I've always been very self motivated. I've always been very goal oriented. I've always been involved in independent sports. So I feel like in so many ways it's been just me, like, I've always had to kind of create something for myself, and, had a lot of struggles in childhood, rebelled a lot, had a lot of issues at home, and, yeah, so I mean, my independence and my drive to keep myself alive and to keep myself moving and to have to, do so many things to push myself forward, that's probably the piece of me that started at a really young age. My family gave me opportunity. I mean, I was in a good school and, I got to go to university, but, there's 5 kids in my family, and there wasn't a lot of pressure to do like, to become a lawyer, become a we definitely had it seemed like it was like that, and all of my family, most of my family isn't are lawyers or politicians, and that was sort of the direction, but there was also a bit of, a lot of space to say, you can do whatever you want, but also a piece of that was I didn't have really necessarily a role model in the direction that I wanted to go. And so much of it was about, me kind of figuring it out and finding who I wanted to look after and or to look to. And did a ton of life trainings and conferences and a lot of soul searching to try and figure out who I was because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I did my undergrad and I did public relations at U of T. And during that time, I've always been involved in the fitness community and worked at Lululemon and, was setting goals for my life and thought, maybe someday I'll open a public relations firm because I love people and I loved being around people and I loved creating experiences for people and event planning and fundraising and, doing charitable work. And so I was really involved in a lot of that world. And so that was my big vision to create or to have a public relations business in Halifax and New York for some reason. And and if you know me, you probably hear that and think that does not necessarily align with your personality, especially back then because I was very much a free spirit. I mean, I was just a hippie. I mean, I probably brushed my hair once every 3 weeks. I lived off the clothes off my back. I was just a very, very minimal person, and the two just didn't align. And at one point, I looked at the goals of the trajectory of where I was heading and looked at who I was as a person and what really made me happy. And there was just no alignment. And so at one point, I said, these are the things I'm passionate about, and these are my skill sets. And how can I create something that actually aligns and creates who I truly am as a person, because for me, my number one core value is authenticity and being authentic. And um, so, yeah, it definitely took a lot of trial and error and moving and pushing and working in different industries. Um, and so at the end of the day, it was like, if you want to, be in this world that you're creating, you're gonna have to build it yourself. You're gonna have to create it yourself. You've got this vision of what kind of life you wanna live and what kind of, place you wanna work in and what kind of industry you wanna be in. At the end of the day, it doesn't exist, so you're gonna have to go and create it. And I did.
Were there pivotal moments in your life that redirected your calling?
Yeah, there was 2 moments, and they're really funny. Sorry, they're not funny, they're just seemingly so insignificant, and I think moments like these that I went through that put me on a very different path are moments in time that probably so many people go through and pass by, uh, but I dialed into it. So one of those moments was while I was in, PR and marketing. I was working at Fashion Magazine in Toronto, and, um, every day, it was a 9 to 5, and, you can imagine the dress code that's there, and every day everybody's putting so much effort into what they look like and how they show up. And I just went in, I was just like, "I do not want to work in a place where I've gotta put on dress pants every day." And that was, as seemingly small as that detail is, because sometimes you just gotta suck it up and do it, it was significant enough for me to say, "This isn't the life that I wanna live." And that was one of the moments. And the other one was well, a lot, along the lines of what I was saying, here's my goals and here's who I am as a person. And I was working at Lululemon and I was sitting down with the manager there, and she was, if you know me, what you do, we don't know each other from Adam, so to speak. um, I think if you know me, what you see is what you get, right? I mean, you know exactly who I am pretty much the moment you meet me. And actually, this is another this there's 2 managers at Lululemon that really shone for me. So, at one point, we were leaving when I was in Halifax, we were leaving a staff meeting, and I, was wearing my tights and my tank top or whatever from working at Lululemon, and I throw on my purse, and it's a leopard print purse with, like, this gold chain on it, and she just looked at me and she was like, "It's just so weird to me that you're carrying that purse." because it was just so uncharacteristic. And it was very much at a point in my life where I didn't know who I was or what was going on. And you try to pick up, okay, what's cool, what's hot, what's everyone else wearing, what's everyone else doing, and that really resonated me as like, yeah, I kind of feel like I'm probably a little lost. And it was just like the comment on the bag, but I was just like, this isn't my personality. And then another manager that I had, so she was, looking at my goals and looking for my vision for my life. And my vision for my life was very much, live on the water, travel, have time to give back, wake up in the morning, sit down, like enjoy a cup of coffee, have space, have flexibility. And then looking at this, like, I want to run an empire in New York City. The two didn't exactly go hand in hand. And so in that moment, we took the piece of paper that had my goals and my vision, we tore it up, and I walked home and I went into a bookstore and I picked up I can't remember exactly what book it was now, but it was something about being a free spirit. And I went home and I was just like, okay, like I've got to figure, I know my identity. And now I just really got to tune into it and decide what that's going to look like for me. So those were my moments.
And what would you say to anyone looking for their mission?
A lot of times we don't think that we have a choice, and we just think, this is the way it is, and this is the box that we're put in, and this is what we're supposed to do. And well, someone told me to do this, or this is what someone else is doing. And I think being able to clue into, oh, maybe I have another option. Like maybe it doesn't have to be this way. Maybe I can do something that doesn't require me to get up every morning and put on clothes that I don't want to wear.
So, in the past little dialogue, you just realized Connie's passion behind building her studios, but really her brand and the feeling that wants to be exuded from her classes. And so, I asked her what was scary about building that.
A scary thing for me in starting the brand is I was kind of going out and doing something against the grain. And, we were putting rock and roll music to yoga classes, and a lot of people would turn their heads and not quite you're going against the grain, you're kind of breaking down the walls of what is tradition here. And for me it was just like, well, I'm just kind of shaping it into myself, and thinking that maybe there's other people who don't necessarily want to fit into this other mold of what society is telling them to do. And so maybe we'll start a little, we'll start a community of like-minded individuals who just don't necessarily follow exactly the path, or don't necessarily conform to what society is telling them to do. So as much as, what I created is a brand, it's really about just a place to find your identity.
As I mentioned before, Connie, at the time of our conversation, was opening her fourth studio and now fifth, taking over a fifth. And so I asked her what are the lessons that she had learned.
Well, I think especially in the last year, and I don't think this is a new lesson for me because it's never been about money for me, but Um, I think just anyone opening a business, and it's so easy to get lost in the making money side of it, because ultimately that's, in order to survive, and that's what a business is meant to do. But it has to be about so much more than that. And if you go into business to make money, you're just, in my opinion, I don't think you can be successful. And I think about the last year where, there's 10 years of work behind me that went into getting to the studios to where they are. And in the blink of an eye, all of a sudden we're shut down and our revenue stream is gone. And what's kept us going and why I've been able to open a studio in the midst of this closure and chaos and lack of revenue streams is that I'm passionate about it, and there's a bigger purpose than that. And I think for sure that's one thing I learned. I remember when I did first open, and um, I felt bad charging people because I just it was an art that I wanted to offer, and it was a space that I wanted to bring people to, and it was so much more than just getting, getting money back for the service that I was providing. Eventually, I did learn that, in fact, you do need to charge people in order to have the business. But it's so easy for people to want to go in a direction for money um, and for the things that they can buy with money or, the life that they can create for themselves. And, the one thing I've always focused on is there's nothing in my life that I can buy that I can't get from pursuing the passion and creating the life that I've curated for myself.
I personally get so fascinated about the quality one needs to be an entrepreneur. So I candidly asked her, what are the qualities to be an entrepreneur? And how does she juggles being a teacher and a manager at the same time?
There's definitely qualities in people that, you're destined to be an entrepreneur. And there's qualities in people that it doesn't work. I mean, it takes a very different set of skills to be an entrepreneur, but it also takes a very certain set of skills to be a 9 to 5 and to work in that environment. Um, I think a lot of people don't are afraid of making a job out of their passion for fear that it will take their passion away.
And I couldn't go on this conversation without asking her, what advice would you give to a young entrepreneur to make passion into career?
Up until really the last year or so, I did a lot. I mean, I definitely have an amazing team and I have some support, but I haven't had like a full-time manager at any of the studios. And so a lot of the work a lot of the backbone I still do very much myself. I'm getting more and more away from that. But because of that, after the first couple years of having the studios, I stopped teaching entirely for about 2 years. I just didn't have time to, plan classes. I hated showing up, not being 100%. It was so hard to be on the back end and then show up and everybody has questions for you. And so to be on both sides, I just found it so challenging. So I stopped teaching for about 2 years. And it wasn't until, the 3rd studio opened, so 2019, I got back into teaching, and I forgot how much I loved it, and I was like, "This is why I'm in this. I'm not in this to answer emails and, to work on the logistics of this business, like, I'm in this because I love people. I love being in front of people. I love that I can potentially be, the 1 hour in people's day, that they get for themselves and to move them and to inspire them and, to help them reach goals and just enjoy themselves. So that was a really big thing for me was, I did get away from the quote unquote part of the business that I was passionate about. And I'm back to teaching now. And I'm just so grateful because that's ultimately what I love about it. But it's interesting. I stepped back from what I actually got in this to do. I think in some ways, and that is probably why people don't do it. They want their passions to remain their passions, but I think it is possible to keep both, but I do understand the fear of, why people don't wanna do it, and especially for this, I mean, this is my life. I mean, my friends are the people that I know from the gyms. My, day to day, wake up thinking about the studio. My hobbies are moving and listening to music and everything to do with this. So there is no space between Connie and what the business and what the brand are. And there's no distinction. There's not one without the other. And um sometimes that can be challenging, but it also just makes the brand as authentic as it is because it's just entirely an encapsulation of who I am. Yeah, I mean, I think first off, you have to, really, really love it. I think people think, "Oh, that seems like it's a cool idea," or that, um, you just it's all consuming, and you have to really be all in, and, I think we learned that especially this last year. If I wasn't fully committed and fully devoted to this, it would have been so easy to be negative and so easy to just give up. Um, so I think number 1, it's just, like, make sure you're really passionate about it. There's a lot of people who have a skill, a great skill, and decide to go into a business for it and don't realize, like, there is a whole other piece of the puzzle. Um, and so, as much as I love teaching, my other passion in marketing and branding and the business side of it, and I'm just as invested in that as everything else. So as much as, I've done a ton of trainings and, my world revolves around fitness, there's a nonstop ongoing education on the business end for me as well. And so, yeah, I mean, it is, you just have to love it so much because it just consumes your everyday, and it's easy to, to keep your head up and to keep moving when things are easy and you love it, and, things are going seamlessly. But when the things that you love to do become, the part of your day that is also the hardest thing to deal with, and also the thing that brings you your ups and downs, I mean, you just have to love it so much that you're gonna push through and keep going no matter what. And when I went into this, I mean, I went into this knowing that I was gonna do whatever it took to gut it to where, to give it everything I could. I knew that it could not fail because I wasn't gonna let it, but I also went into it and said, I was 21 when I started the vision for it. I was 25 when I opened the first studio, and I said, "You know what? I'll do this until I'm 30, and I'll give it everything I have." And, at that point, at least I still have time to pursue something else. And so I went in with that, and I also had a vision for myself of what is the worst case scenario here? If this doesn't work, if I have to go bankrupt, if I lose everything, if nobody walks in through the doors, what's the worst case scenario? And I created that vision really, really clearly for myself. And if I was okay with that, then I could keep going. And so I've always held on to that. I still have that image in every decision I make and every investment and, every loan I take out. It's like you have to look at, okay, what is your worst case scenario, and are you ready to accept it if it gets to that? Because not every business succeeds, like not every business goes through, and um, you want to make sure that you're prepared for that, but also going to keep going in the days that that are really challenging to get through, because you have probably more of those days than the other ones.
In an online world that is so saturated, how do you keep remaining true to you?
Now, especially, I mean, it's so congested, and the online world is so congested, and sometimes it's really hard to be heard. There's so many options, there's so much variety. I mean, there's also just, a lot of people identifying as experts, or, people eh, people's work that's not authentic, or, there's so many ways to play the system now as well, that sometimes it's hard to stay to remain true to, your core and your why, and stay, um it's just there's just so much noise.
I asked one of the last question, almost knowing the answer, but I asked her if she believed in failure and what has happened before she turned 30.
No, I don't think I believe in failure. No. No, I mean, yeah, have I made mistakes? Absolutely. Have I gotten in trouble for doing things that, I shouldn't have done, or not knowing, just, not knowing what things were wrong to say, or, different ways of marketing. And for sure, I mean, I've taken a lot of risks, and I'm not educated at all going into this business and going into this world. And I mean, we're in such a changing world as well, that, um, there's so much to adapt to. So no, I mean, I've had a lot of non-successes, but you just learn so much from those, and they're so humbling, and they just help you grow so much, that I think it's so hard to say, like, "Yeah, that I failed in that moment," because, obviously, we've continued to rise because, as you just said, we're still here. So, if to truly fail, um, you'd still you'd still remain, not at the bottom, so to speak, but you wouldn't be able to pick your head up. So, it's funny because because I had put so much stress on this number 30 from the second I created this business. Um, a year before I turned 30, a year or so, yeah, I opened the second studio, because I was like, I really wanna do something else before I turn 30. I really wanna make sure that, I'm on the right track, and I'm really putting myself out there, and making a big mission for myself. And then, um, it was like, I don't know, the next year or that yeah, the next year anyways, like 5 months before I actually turned 30. I was like, "I really gotta do one more thing before I turn 30." So I opened Rebel, and it was like that was a big push. It was like, so much of it was just proving to myself and, you know, showing myself how far I could push myself and, uh my ability to keep going and to be resilient. And, my big vision was to open this small little yoga and Pilates studio by the time I turned 30. But once I got there, it was like, okay, how much more can you prove to yourself that you can make something of this and really create a livelihood for yourself and just really create an impact for others. So
And I couldn't wait to know. Did she have mentors, role models? Listen to this.
that's a good question. I mean, lots of people inspire me for sure. I don't know that I definitely have like a specific like business model or mogul that I follow, but um, there's definitely different people that are models for different things in my life. Definitely a lot of like different business leaders that I tune into, but yeah, I've never really had like a business coach, or I've never really had like a specific mentor per se that has like guided me, or that I've tried to follow in their path. I think I just am mostly inspired by, honestly, more so like the community around me and the people that show up through our doors. I mean, they're my biggest role models because they're my reason for being and why I'm able to keep going. So I think on a grander scale, it's just literally the people that actually want to come and believe in what I'm doing. Those are my role models.
I loved Connie's fresh take on rituals. When I asked her if she had rituals and something to bring her back to who she is.
Basically been trying my entire life to put rituals in place. And it's just not who I am. Like I have tried 1,000 times to be like, "Okay, I'm gonna wake up at this time every single day, I'm gonna meditate, I'm gonna take a cold shower, I'm gonna move, I'm gonna journal, I'm gonna spend, an hour working on strategy, I'm gonna read," and it's just not who I am. So there's definitely a lot of things that I do. I think the other side of it too is I just go through so much self-transformation every year. Like, I just feel like I'm a different person every year, and you can kind of see that in the way that the studios have, evolved as well. I used to be such a free spirit. Like I mentioned, I'm a so type B, like, I just was so carefree and you know, just whatever. And, um, I've had like, my personality has changed so much because of this business and because of its growth, and I've just had to become a lot more of a type A and actually, like, have my shit together, and, I feel like I have such a big responsibility now. So, yes, like, I like to get up early. I always like, movement such a part of my day, music such a piece for me, spending time alone, but more than anything, I think the true ritual that helps me align with who I really am is when I'm traveling, and I like to travel alone. And I say that just because I find it's the only time that I'm just, like, truly and fully get back to the root and core of who I am, and I get to kind of test and challenge myself and show up in ways and hit, and problem solve, without somebody else's opinion or somebody else there to support me or to rely on, if that makes sense. So, when you're traveling in a foreign country and you've lost your cell phone and you don't speak the language and you don't know where you're going and you just have to kind of figure it all out on your own, and I find those are the moments that I, like, truly align and understand who I am, and that's what builds my character. So it's not a day-to-day ritual for me because 'cause I'm not a consistent person, and I'm very much all over the map. I mean, ask any of my team, it's like, I'm coming from all directions at all times, and I think that's part of why I've done what I've done and built what I've built, is just because 'cause I'm just constantly moving and constantly going. But traveling for sure is not necessarily a consistent ritual, but it's a rich something I do rely on to bring me back to who I am.
Oh, but in the end, perhaps we did find one ritual or two.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, when I went to France, that was a huge a huge soul travel for me. So, yeah, I mean, it's the only time I really even have time to have rituals. I mean, every single day of my life, it looks so different. It's virtually impossible for me to have rituals, and I kind of like it that way. It keeps it exciting for me. I get I'm so used to chaos, and it's just the environment that I grew up in, and I had a psychologist tell me once that anything other than chaos is uncomfortable for me. So, I don't thrive in environments of consistency or ritual or pattern, and I think that's why I don't have rituals. That's it. I think there's so many books about it, and there's so many, business leaders who are like, these are the 5 things you need to do every day, and you have to wake up at 5 AM, and then 5 AM is a club, and, I think it's just another conforming of society that I don't wanna be a part of. It's just another it's another force of people saying, "This is how you should do things." It's another box to live in, and as we know, I'm obviously just not somebody who lives in a box, so I think it's a part of me, it's also just a bit rebelling. Everybody's like, "Well, you need to meditate every day." It's like, "Well, no, you need to meditate every day, or you think that you need to meditate every day, but I don't need to. It doesn't work for me. I've tried it." My one thing that I stay true to is I have a bath almost every single night because it's kind of the one time that I get quiet. Um, at the end, it doesn't matter if if I don't end my day till midnight or whatever the case may be, I basically have to have a bath. It's just the one space that I like get space and get quiet, and it's just like such a pivotal part of my day to just be like, okay, nobody can find me in here. Nobody can reach me. Nobody needs you right now. Just sit in this warm water and just saturate.
And the last quick questions are, what are your favorite mantra?
I have 2. The one is the mission mantra for myself, and that's find a mission bigger than yourself. And then my mantra for, that I say to myself a lot through, any ups and downs and trials and tribulations is, that life is just a series of experiences.
Favorite flower?
I'll say tulips.
Favorite book?
This isn't a female brand, but this is one that relates to both business and just humans, and I think, again, for me, it's more like, obviously I love business, but for me, it's really more about self-development, and the book is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. That's probably the book that has given me the most important perspective.
Favorite podcast?
Yeah, I do listen to a lot of podcasts. They're mostly business related. How I Built This. I'm really into Lewis House, School of Greatness. I just love it. I love hearing people's stories. I love hearing about people's, as much as I don't have rituals, but hearing about, people's methods for staying on track. And I listen to a lot of Tony Robbins, do a lot of Gary Vee.
Favorite treat?
I live up the street from Dairy Queen, so I guiltily go there probably more often than I should.
And what do you wish more women knew about their magic?
I would say, one thing I've learned so much about, and I've done a lot of life trainings and gone to, done a lot of coaching on this. I think so much of what holds us back is the stories that we create about ourselves, and I think that's especially true in the case of women, and I think that, um, that's especially true because of, where what women have had to go through and what we've had to face, and, I think there's just so much power in saying to yourself that you refuse to live in the restrictions or the stereotypes that society has put on you. And so I think the magic just comes from pulling off those labels and just getting rid of the stories that we've placed on ourselves based on things that have happened, either to us or to us as a population, and just starting to build our own story and build our own story. And I think that's, obviously you hear me say I read a lot of male authors and male podcasts, and that's a story that I created from a very young age, that I'm not going to allow any distinction to be between the power of women and the power of men. And I'm okay to sit in a boardroom with 8 men. And, a lot of the times I'm up for different things, or I'm having to present my business and the boardroom, and it's, eight wealthy white, right, white haired men. So I'm in these environments quite a bit. And I just, from the very beginning, I've said, I'm not going to let that define who I am, or I'm not going to build a story on what that looks like, and I'm just going to build my own story of who I am and how I'm going to show up in the world. And I think that's been my magic, and I think that's how we create our own magic, is just to create maybe a new story about who we are.
Where can we find you and how can we support you?
Oh my God! Well, geez, come by the studio, come for a class, come move. I mean, this has been amazing. I think you're so inspiring, and you have been so supportive just even through this. So, you know what? I'm just grateful that for me, it's about the impact, and it's about that even if people aren't physically present in those spaces. It's, the brand and the messaging, to create your own identity and be your own person is really at the forefront of our brand. And I think if people can live in that, then they're truly supporting what we're all about. And so that's the most important thing to me, is at least people take something away from it, whether they come into the studios that support the actual physical brand, or take something away from our messaging and what we represent.
Thank you to Connie for this incredible and just so generous conversation about her business journey, her journey into really standing and owning her identity and just being yourself. Thank you so much. And again, thank you to all who's listening. We'll see you the next season. Bye.
This podcast was produced by Tosh Taylor of the Podcast Hub Productions. Find her online at podcasthub.ca.